Family Ramble, written and read by Malcolm Cowper. Kevin Thompson looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, at the face that had grown inexplicably chubby over the past few years. "Today," he said, "is the first day of the rest of my life. I'm going to get fit." With the words of his recently visited GP still ringing in his ears, he was going to stop smoking and lose weight. And he was going to start that very day. He was going on a ramble, and not just a stroll down a country lane, but to the top of Pen y Fan, the highest mountain in the Brecon Beacons. And he was not going alone. He was taking his two children, David, 13, and Sean, 11, with him. This was his weekend to have them, and for once they were not going to spend the whole time on TikTok or Netflix. They were going on a family ramble. "What?" they chorused. "Go on a ramble? With you?" "Yes," said Kevin. "It's time we became more active. You'll love it." Of course, neither of them had brought suitable clothes or footwear. Sean only had open-toed sandals, and although David was wearing trainers, the thought of them getting besmirched in mud appalled him. Kevin found a discarded, no longer fashionable pair of Sean's trainers in the bedroom. "Doesn't matter you haven't got any waterproof," said Kevin airily. "There's no rain forecast for today." "Shouldn't we have a map?" inquired David. "No," said his father. "There are plenty of footpath signs. We'll just follow them." So off they set. The sun was warm and bright. The skylarks were filling the air with their joyful song, and Kevin was feeling a deep glow of satisfaction. The sullenness was disappearing from his children's faces, and they were chatting and laughing, just like they used to do in happier times. However, Kevin was soon regretting his years of smoking, and they had to make frequent stops for him to get his breath. At lunchtime, earlier than planned, they sat on the grass and set to work on the sandwiches which he had remembered at the last minute to make. "Look at that big cloud over there," said Sean. "It looks more like fog." "Oh, don't worry about that. It's just low cloud. It'll soon pass over." But when the cloud reached them, it did not soon pass over. Suddenly, it felt damp and clammy. The children started to shiver in their inadequate clothing. "Come on then," said Kevin. "Best move on and keep warm." But they could no longer see a path in the fog. "We'll be okay once we're out of the cloud," said Kevin. "Then we'll see where we are." But they did not come out of the cloud. They walked and walked, praying for a break, but it never came. "Dad, we're lost," moaned David. Sean too was starting to panic. "Don't panic," said Kevin. "We'll soon be out of here." But when the light began to fade, he too started to feel icy tentacles of fear. They'd seen no sign of a footpath, and now their feet were starting to sink in the boggy ground. Eventually, exhausted, they flopped down onto the wet grass. The sandwiches had all been eaten, and the flask of tea was empty. They began to contemplate the appalling prospect of a freezing night on the mountain. "Can't we phone somebody?" asked David in despair. "No signal up here," said Kevin. Sean began to sob softly. David maintained a teeth-gritted silence. Kevin was desperate for a cigarette. Suddenly, they heard voices in the distance. Then, out of the gloom, figures emerged, carrying flashlights. "Over here!" shouted the lost ones. "It's the Brecon Beacons Mountain Rescue Team. Are you the Thompson family?" came the reply. "Yes! Oh, thank God you found us." They almost wept for joy as the rescuers wrapped them in blankets and led them to safety. "How did you know we were here?" asked Kevin. "Your daughter phoned her mum this morning and told her where you were going. When she hadn't heard from you by this evening, she phoned us." When they got back to the car park, the team leader took Kevin aside. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "you do realize that you've been incredibly irresponsible. You not only put your own life in danger, but also your children's. You set off without adequate equipment, and you didn't let anyone know where you were going. If your daughter hadn't phoned her mum, you would have all died of exposure. Please don't ever do this again until you've done some training and acquired a modicum of common sense." It was the first and last time that the Thompsons ever went on a family ramble.